Hey, I'm Dominique Guinard. I'm the CTO and co-founder of a company called EVERYTHING. And before founding EVERYTHING 5 years ago, I was an IoT researcher for about 10 years, looking in particular at the tagged side of IoT, so from RFID to printed and low power sensors on all kinds of CPG and apparel goods. Yeah, so today I was asked to talk about the blockchain part, thinking about what impact blockchain will have on the Internet of Things. And what I wanted to do today was to make sure that we kept a cold head when looking at the blockchain, because there's a blockchain craze, and the result of that hype is that we feel as a community that the blockchain can resolve almost any problem. Today I wanted to bring to people's attention that there are big opportunities with the blockchain, but there are also big challenges ahead. It's a technology, a set of technology and principles that we just start to work with. It's not something that's fully mature yet. It's something that still has to evolve to really fulfill its promises. So yeah, that was the crux of what I wanted to convey today. So a realistic view at the blockchain, not a pessimistic one, but a realistic one where we look at the challenges and the opportunities. Yeah, so we also talked about that today, about the link between the IoT and the blockchain, and looked at some of the interesting use cases. And some of the use cases we talked about were around traceability, provenance. The blockchain can enable to achieve more trusted provenance and more trusted traceability because of the properties of the blockchains. We also talked about data sharing in the IoT, and the blockchain has some interesting aspects in terms of the complete decentralization, which changes the control from a central entity to lots of little entities that collaborate together. Things also like the token economy, which could be interesting for a device to communicate with other devices and exchange value in a simple way that's baked in the network. So those are things we talked about. So great perspective, but massive challenges today to make it happen. So we're still looking at several years before those technologies will be ready, tackling challenges like scalability, energy consumption and so on, which are tremendously important challenges to tackle for large-scale deployments. And if I look at the world of software, which is the world I know pretty well, you had these big waterfall projects in the past, and we moved to a system where we're looking at a much more agile kind of cycle, right? So shorter cycles, delivering one thing at a time, but in a much faster way, right? That's easier said than done, though, right? And I think one of the keys is to make sure you understand at every cycle, you really truly understand what is it that you're trying to achieve, right? What's your primary objective? That you understand what you're trying to build at every iteration, and when you see that what you've built is not necessarily exactly matching the needs of your customer or of your users, then you need to iterate and don't be afraid of sending things to trash and restart. That's also, especially in software. I mean, as software engineers, it's extremely hard to just discard your code and start new. But sometimes you just have to, right? What I learned in the past few years is that the cycles have shortened. The number of years the technology is in production for have also shortened, which is somehow good, because it means we can afford to have shorter iterations where we modify things again and again and again, because we know anyway software won't last forever, and in 2 years everything will have to be 2-3 years everything will have to be rewritten. But I think it's just shorter iterations, making sure all the stakeholders are talking and really thinking about what you're building in the next iteration with all the stakeholders you can bring to the table. One thing I also learned is to not look at a software engineering problem as a software engineering problem, but first as in take the other stakeholders. What do they want? How do they see the system? working with visuals is something that really helped us, for instance, ensuring that we always start an iteration with what would be the user experience, and we try to depict it in a visual way. What would it be? What should it look like? And then try to put the software below that. I think one thing is the time constraint, actually. My experience, although it's not, dozens and dozens of years, but my experience, at least with my company, is that actually timelines are very useful, and having time pressure is actually instrumental to delivering anything. So short iteration, one of the best benefits is just that you have a deadline. You must deliver something in 2 weeks or whatever your sprint cycle is, and that puts the right pressure, but the motivating pressure on the team, right? So I think that's something great. If we continue looking at Agile, one thing that Agile says is, not necessarily in all forms, but in many forms, is that co-location is important. So I mean, definitely the distance is a big challenge. I've seen that in many cases, that the distance is a challenge. I think one way to make sure that the distance is not a massive challenge is to make sure that everyone is aligned on the objectives, right? That the objectives are clear enough, even if they're small, but adding small objectives to one another, to make sure that everyone understands them without needing to be collocated, right? I mean, complex objectives require collocation so that you can whiteboard it and explain it at length. Smaller iterations, smaller objectives are easier to convey over the distance. That's my experience. I think one interesting thing is, if you're talking about the Scrum Master, is I don't see the Scrum Master as the person who leads the project, but one role that the Scrum Master has, which is interesting to your question, is that this person is responsible for bringing data about the progress. And that's something that I saw for us was game-changing. When we started to actually show burn-down charts, so that's basically the progress day after day, right? When we started to show this on a regular basis, all teams had to show each other. We have an all hands in the company where everyone in the company meets everyone, right? It's an hour every week. And we started showing these burn-down charts. That puts the necessary positive pressure on the teams to deliver. And if a team doesn't deliver, it does happen, right? It's just that burn-down chart will look bad. And the sort of gamification of the whole process means that they will feel bad by themselves, and they will try to, the next iteration, to improve it. And that is what I learned. Rather than, introducing a blame culture, introduce the right amount of pressure, the right amount of gamification, just to motivate people to deliver. And that is also much easier said than done. I think one big thing is to put the team, the smaller team, the squad, like you call them sometimes in Agile, in control, versus a single person who controls. Because if there's a single person who controls, then that person is accountable and responsible for delivering, not the whole team. So it's about making the team responsible. And I believe in the gamification. That when I've seen our teams delivering the most is because the objective was clear. The time they had was not too long. When it's too long, it's not motivating enough. And so they excelled, right? I mean, clear objective, time that's reasonable but not too long. And then they just sprint, like you would say in Agile. But it's hard to get it right every time. Absolutely.